Billionaire's daughter hides her poor friend in the mansion, but when her father finds out, he does something unbelievable. The alarm clock went off at 5:30 in the morning, as always. Malcolm Reed stretched out his arm and silenced it before it could wake anyone else in the house. Not that there was much noise to worry about. The 3-story mansion in Riverside Heights seemed to swallow every sound. He got out of the king-size bed, his bare feet touching the polished oak floor. 42 years old, brown hair already showing grey strands at the temples, dark eyes that carried the weight of someone who slept too little and thought too much. Malcolm had built an empire in the real estate sector, but lately he felt as if he were living in one of the houses he sold. Beautiful on the outside, empty on the inside. The shower was quick and mechanical. A precisely trimmed beard, dark grey suit, navy blue tie, Italian shoes, everything in its place, everything perfect. Exactly how Sarah liked him to dress. Sarah. Malcolm stopped in front of the mirror and took a deep breath. 2 years and 4 months. That's how long it had been since she was gone, and yet, every morning, he got ready as if she were going to appear in the bathroom doorway with that smile. "Daddy," the small voice pulled him from his thoughts. Malcolm turned and found Maisie standing in the doorway, holding a worn-out stuffed rabbit. Messy, curly brown hair from sleep, big, dark eyes like his, but with an innocence he had lost long ago. "Good morning, Princess." He knelt to her level. "You're up early today. I had a nightmare." Maisie rubbed her eyes with a small fist. "I dreamed that you left and never came back." Malcolm's chest tightened. He pulled his daughter into a quick hug, inhaling the scent of baby shampoo from her hair. "Daddy always comes back, you know that," he said, but the words came out drier than he intended. "Mrs. Henderson will take care of you today. She's going to make those pancakes you like. Can I go to work with you?" "Not today, sweetie. Daddy has important meetings." Maisie looked down, and Malcolm felt a pang of something he couldn't name. He pushed the feeling away and stood up. "I'll leave some money for Mrs. Henderson to take you to the park. How about that?" "Okay." The reply was quiet, resigned. Malcolm kissed the top of his daughter's head and went down to the kitchen. Mrs. Henderson, a 60-year-old woman with an Irish accent and infinite patience, was already making coffee. She had been taking care of Maisie since Sarah died, and Malcolm was grateful for that. "Good morning, Mr. Reed." Mrs. Henderson handed him a cup of black coffee. "The little one woke up early today. I think she had nightmares again, so she'll be fine." Malcolm took a sip of coffee and grabbed his briefcase. "I'll be late tonight. The meeting with the Japanese investors might run long." "Of course, sir." Mrs. Henderson hesitated. "Mr. Reed, if I may. Perhaps Maisie could use more time with you. She's always asking when you're coming home." Malcolm paused at the kitchen door. For a moment, something stirred in his chest, but he swallowed the feeling along with the last sip of his coffee. "She has everything she needs, Mrs. Henderson. A good school, good food, toys, clothes." He adjusted his tie. "That's what matters." The office of Reed & Associates was located downtown, on the top floor of a glass skyscraper. Malcolm had chosen that spot because from there he could see the entire city he was helping to shape. "Good morning, Mr. Reed." Jennifer, his assistant, stood up as soon as he walked past the reception desk. "The documents for the merger with Morrison Corp are on your desk. The 9 o'clock meeting has been postponed to 10. Malcolm nodded and continued to his office. Glass walls, a mahogany desk, a panoramic view of the city, all designed to impress, and it worked. The phone rang. Reed & Associates. "Mr. Reed?" It was Mrs. Henderson, and there was something in her voice that made him sit up straighter in his chair. "I'm sorry to bother you, but Maisie is asking if you can come to her school recital this afternoon." "Recital?" "Yes, sir. She's mentioned it several times this week. It's the spring recital. All the children are performing something." Malcolm ran a hand through his hair. He didn't remember any recital. When had it been scheduled? Why hadn't anyone told him? "What time?" 3 in the afternoon, sir." He looked at his schedule. Meeting with the Japanese investors at 2:30. Contract review at 4. Video conference with Los Angeles at 5. I can't today, Mrs. Henderson. Explain to her that Daddy has important commitments. Maybe the next one. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Of course, Mr. Reed. I'll explain. And Mrs. Henderson, buy her something nice. A new doll or whatever, to make up for it. Yes, sir. The call ended, but Malcolm stared at the phone for a few seconds. Something was wrong there, something he couldn't quite identify. But Jennifer knocked on the door with more documents, and the feeling was lost in the whirlwind of numbers and contracts. The hours passed as they always did. The meeting with the Japanese went well. The merger would be profitable. The numbers made sense. The future looked bright. So why did he feel so empty? It was almost 8 at night when Malcolm finally arrived home. The mansion was silent again, with only a few dim lights illuminating the rooms. Mrs. Henderson had left, leaving a covered plate in the refrigerator and a list of completed tasks on the counter. Maisie had dinner at 6, bath at 7, asleep by 7:30. She asked for you 3 times. Malcolm walked up the stairs slowly, his shoes echoing on the marble. Maisie's bedroom door was ajar and he peeked inside. She was sleeping, hugging the stuffed rabbit, her breathing soft, her small face relaxed. On the dresser was a new drawing. Malcolm moved closer to get a better look. Colored pencils on drawing paper, the uncertain lines of a child. A house, their house, with 2 windows, a red door, and 2 figures in front. One small, in a dress, with curly hair. The other tall, in a suit, a briefcase in his hand. The 2 figures were holding hands, with big smiles drawn on both faces. Malcolm felt something stir inside his chest as he saw how Maisie had portrayed them, together, happy, connected. Malcolm felt something break inside his chest. He picked up the drawing with trembling hands and sat on the edge of the bed. Maisie stirred in her sleep, murmuring something he couldn't understand. "I'm sorry, Princess," he whispered, lightly touching her hair. "Daddy didn't know. I didn't know you were waiting for me." But Maisie kept sleeping. Malcolm stayed there for a few minutes, watching his daughter breathe, trying to remember the last time they had truly talked. He couldn't remember. When he finally stood up to leave, Maisie opened her big dark eyes, still half lost in sleep. "Daddy, you're home." "I'm home, sweetie." He leaned down to kiss her forehead. "Go back to sleep." "Did you see my drawing?" Malcolm looked at the paper in his hand. "I did. It's very beautiful. It's us." Maisie rubbed her eyes. "We're taking a walk together, holding hands." Malcolm looked at the drawing again, noticing the details he had missed at first glance, the connected hands, the smiles, the closeness of the figures. "What kind of walk is it?" "A normal walk," Maisie said simply, "like other kids do with their parents, in the park or at the beach or just walking down the street." She paused. "I miss taking walks with you, Daddy." Malcolm's chest tightened. His daughter had drawn something they never did, something simple, every day, that to her represented everything. "Sleep now, Maisie. We'll talk tomorrow, okay?" She nodded and closed her eyes again. He left the room and slowly closed the door, the drawing still in his hand. In the silent hallway, Malcolm Reed, a successful man, a respected businessman, a 42-year-old widower, leaned against the wall and finally understood what was wrong. He was giving his daughter everything, except for the one thing she truly wanted: himself. Riverside Heights Elementary was a red brick building surrounded by ancient oak trees. It was the kind of place where children wore impeccable uniforms and carried expensive lunch boxes, where parents drove imported cars and talked about investments while waiting in the drop-off line. Maisie got out of the black car with Mrs. Henderson, her pink backpack on and the stuffed rabbit hidden inside. She always took Mr. Bunny to school, even though she knew the other kids had stopped playing with stuffed animals. But Evie never made fun of her. Evie understood. "Have a good day, sweetie." Mrs. Henderson waved from the window. "Your father said he might be home early today." Maisie waved back, but she didn't really believe the promise. Daddy always said he'd be home early. The schoolyard was buzzing with children running, yelling and playing before the bell. Maisie looked for Evie's dark, curly hair near the slide where they always met, but the spot was empty. Strange. Evie was never late. "Maisie!" a familiar voice called out. It was Sophie Chen, a girl from her class who always had stories to tell. "Did you see Evie today? She seems kind of weird." "Weird how?" "I don't know, sad. She's over there by the library, all by herself." Maisie headed in the direction Sophie pointed and found Evie sitting on the library steps, hugging her knees to her chest. She was wearing the same blue dress from yesterday, a bit wrinkled, and her curly hair was less tidy than usual. "Evie?" Maisie approached slowly. "Are you okay?" Evie looked up with red-rimmed eyes and forced a smile that wasn't convincing at all. "Hi, Maisie. I'm fine." "No, you're not." Maisie sat down next to her friend. "You've been crying." "I can tell because your eyes get darker when you cry." Evie sighed and rested her chin on her knees. "It's just—" She stopped, as if the words were too hard to say. "Mom lost her job last month, and yesterday. Yesterday we had to leave our house." "Leave? Why?" "Because we couldn't pay the rent," Evie said quietly, ashamed. "The landlord said we had to leave immediately. He put all our stuff out on the street." Maisie felt something tighten in her chest. She didn't really understand how these adult things worked, rent, money, jobs, but she perfectly understood what it meant to not have a home. "And where are you going to live now?" Evie took a long time to answer. "Mom said she'd figure something out, that I could keep coming to school like normal." She wiped her nose on the sleeve of her dress. "We just don't have a place to sleep." The bell rang, calling all the children to their classrooms. Maisie took Evie's hand and gently pulled her up. "Come on, we'll talk more at recess." During math class, Maisie couldn't focus on the addition and subtraction problems. She kept thinking about Evie, about her mom, about how it was possible for someone not to have a place to sleep. In her house, there were so many empty rooms that she sometimes got lost in the hallways. How could there be people with no place at all? Mrs. Patterson, the teacher, was explaining even and odd numbers, but Maisie could only think of solutions. And when recess finally came, she already had a plan. "Evie," she ran to her friend Ed, who was sitting alone on a bench under a tree. "I know how to solve your problem." "What problem?" "The problem of you not having a place to sleep." Maisie sat next to her, her eyes shining with excitement. "You can stay at my house." Evie blinked, confused. "Your house?" "Yes. There are tons of empty rooms, and there's food and comfy beds and bathrooms with hot water." Maisie held her friend's hands. "You can live there." "But what about your dad? He wouldn't let me." Maisie thought for a moment. It was true that Daddy would probably say no. Grown-ups always complicated simple things, but she had a better idea. He doesn't have to know. At least not at first. Her eyes lit up. "The attic. You can stay in my attic. Nobody ever goes up there. I can bring you food, blankets, everything you need. But Maisie, and at night, when my dad gets home from work, you'll be super quiet. He'll never find out." Maisie was getting more and more excited about the plan. It'll be like having a secret sister. Evie hesitated. It was a crazy idea, but at the same time, where else could she go? "What if we get caught?" "We won't. I promise I'll take care of you." Maisie spoke with the seriousness of a child making a solemn vow. Best friends take care of best friends, right? Evie felt her eyes fill with tears again, but this time they were tears of relief. "You'd really do that for me?" "Of course." Maisie hugged her tightly. "We've known each other since kindergarten. You're practically my sister." The rest of the school day flew by. Maisie spent the whole time planning how the secret operation would work. During science class, she drew a map of the attic in her notebook. During snack time, she calculated how many cookies she could hide in her backpack. During English class, she thought about which books Evie would like to read in the hours she'd be alone. When Mrs. Henderson came to pick her up at the end of the day, Maisie was practically buzzing with anticipation. "How was school today, dear?" Mrs. Henderson asked as she drove through the neighborhood's tree-lined streets. "It was good." Maisie tried to sound casual. "Mrs. Henderson, are you going out tonight?" "No, dear. I'll be staying until your father gets home, as always." "Why?" "Just curious." Maisie bit her lip. This was going to be harder than she thought. At home, she went straight to the attic. It was a large, dusty space, filled with old boxes, covered furniture, and things nobody used anymore. There were 2 small windows that let in enough light during the day, and the wooden floor creaked with every step. But with a little imagination. Maisie ran downstairs and returned carrying pillows, blankets, and some of her favorite books. She found an old mattress leaning against the wall and dragged it near one of the windows. It wasn't very comfortable, but it was better than the floor. In a dusty box, she discovered an old lamp that still worked. The light was dim and yellowish, but it created a cozy atmosphere in the little corner she was preparing. "It's going to be perfect," she murmured to herself, arranging the pillows. In the kitchen, she filled a water bottle and wrapped some chocolate chip cookies in a napkin. Mrs. Henderson was watching her soap opera in the living room, so she didn't notice Maisie sneaking upstairs with the supplies. The plan was simple. The next day, after school, she would bring Evie home. Her friend would go straight up to the attic while Maisie distracted Mrs. Henderson, and at night, when everyone was asleep, they could whisper and play. It was a perfect plan. What could go wrong? The next morning, Maisie woke up earlier than usual. She got dressed quickly and went down for breakfast, her backpack already prepared with more cookies and an apple hidden at the bottom. "You're excited today," Mrs. Henderson commented, serving pancakes. "Anything special at school?" "Just a normal day." Maisie ate quickly, anxious to find Evie and tell her about the perfect hideout she had prepared. At school, she found her friend in the same spot as yesterday, alone, sad, wearing the same clothes. Maisie's heart ached seeing her condition. "Evie, I got everything ready." She ran to hug her friend. "The attic is perfect. There's a bed, food, even a light for you to read at night." Evie forced a smile, but Maisie could tell something was wrong. "Where did you sleep last night?" she asked, concerned. "My mom," Evie hesitated. "My mom found a place, a temporary one." "What kind of place?" "A safe place," Evie said quickly, changing the subject. "Are you sure your dad won't find out if I go to your house?" "I'm sure. He hardly ever goes up there, and neither does Mrs. Henderson." Maisie held her friend's hands. "It's going to work, I promise." The day dragged on. During recess, Maisie showed Evie the way to her house, pointing out landmarks and explaining where the back door was that they could use. "We'll go in through the kitchen. If Mrs. Henderson is there, I'll distract her by asking for a snack. Then you go up the stairs very slowly and head straight for the attic." Maisie spoke like a military strategist. "The attic door is at the end of the second-floor hallway. There's a little rope to pull." Evie nodded, memorizing every detail. When the final bell rang, the 2 girls walked together to the school gate. Mrs. Henderson was waiting in the car, reading a magazine. "Hi, Mrs. Henderson," Maisie waved. "This is my friend Evie. She's coming over today to work on a school project." Mrs. Henderson smiled kindly. "Hello, dear. Of course. Get in the car." Evie hesitated for just a second before getting in. Her hands were trembling slightly, but Maisie squeezed one of them, giving her courage. The drive home was quiet. Evie looked out the window, observing the huge houses, the perfect gardens, the clean streets. It was a different world from the one she knew. "We're here," Mrs. Henderson announced, pulling into the mansion's driveway. The Reed house was impressive even by the neighborhood standards. 3 stories, white columns at the entrance, enormous windows reflecting the sky. To Maisie, it was just home. To Evie, it looked like a castle. "Come on, I'll show you my room first." Maisie pulled her friend by the hand. They entered through the main door, passed through the living room with its expensive furniture, and went up the marble staircase. Mrs. Henderson went to the kitchen to prepare a snack, just as Maisie had predicted. Wow, Evie whispered, looking around. Your house is gigantic. Yeah, sometimes I feel a little lost in here, Maisie admitted, but now you'll be here with me. They quickly passed through Maisie's room, an explosion of pink and white with a canopy bed, a shelf full of books, and a dollhouse bigger than many actual apartments. Evie was impressed, but Maisie didn't give her time to admire it. Come on, I'll show you your hideout. They went up another flight of stairs to the second floor, then found the rope that opened the access to the attic. A folding ladder came down, and Maisie climbed up first, pulling Evie up behind her. Ta-da! Maisie made a dramatic gesture. Welcome to your secret castle. Evie looked around, amazed. The little corner Maisie had prepared truly looked magical. The mattress was made up with fluffy pillows and a colorful blanket. There was a stack of books, cookies in a bowl, a bottle of water, and the old lamp cast a warm golden glow. Maisie. Evie couldn't finish the sentence. Her eyes filled with tears. Do you like it? It's perfect, Evie whispered. It's the most beautiful place I've ever slept. Maisie's chest swelled with pride and happiness. She had done it. She had created a safe place for her best friend. You can stay here as long as you need, she promised, and I'll come up whenever I can to keep you company. Girls, Mrs. Henderson's voice echoed from downstairs. The snack is ready. We have to go down, Maisie said, but after dinner, when Mrs. Henderson leaves, I'll come back up. They went down for their snack, jelly sandwiches, chocolate milk, and homemade cookies. Evie ate with an appetite that revealed it had been a while since her last decent meal. Your friend seems like a very polite girl, Mrs. Henderson commented to Maisie when Evie went to the bathroom. She's the best friend in the world, Maisie replied sincerely. When it was time for Mrs. Henderson to leave, the plan went into action. Maisie said that Evie's mom had already picked her up, and the nanny left without suspecting a thing. As soon as Mrs. Henderson's car disappeared from view, Maisie ran to the attic. It worked. She climbed the steps 2 at a time. Now you can come down, take a shower, have dinner with me. But when she reached the top, she found Evie huddled on the mattress and crying softly. Evie, what's wrong? It's my mum, Evie sobbed. She doesn't know where I am. She must be worried. Maisie sat down next to her friend, not sure what to say. She had thought of food, shelter, safety, but she hadn't thought about Evie's mom. Where is she now? Evie hesitated, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. She said she found a place to sleep, but I think she lied so I wouldn't worry. What kind of place? I don't know, Evie mumbled. She dropped me off at school this morning and said she was going to look for work. She said she'd pick me up at 6, Arnes, but she glanced at her small wristwatch. It's already 7 o'clock. Maisie's stomach twisted. What if something had happened to Evie's mum? What if she was desperately searching for her daughter? We have to find her. But how? I don't even know where she is, Maisie thought quickly. She had known Evie for years, knew where her family used to live before the eviction, knew the places they used to go. We'll look for her, she decided. Tomorrow after school, we'll go find her. And what if we can't find her? We will, Maisie said with a confidence she didn't fully feel. And until then, you'll stay here, safe, fed and protected. They had dinner together in the attic. Maisie had brought up 2 plates of pasta that she'd heated in the microwave. Evie ate slowly, savoring every bite as if it were the most delicious thing in the world. You know what's weird, Evie said, playing with her pasta. I should be scared. I should be desperate. But here with you, I feel safe for the first time in weeks. That's because we're family now, Maisie replied. Not by blood, but by choice. When it was time for bed, Maisie went down to her room but couldn't fall asleep. She kept thinking about Evie upstairs, alone in the attic, and about her mom wherever she was. Outside, the night was cold. Somewhere in the city, Lauren Murphy was wrapped in a thin blanket in the back seat of an abandoned car, trying to stay warm. She had dropped Evie at school in the morning, promising she would return, but when she got to their meeting spot, she couldn't find her daughter. She had searched for hours, asking other parents, calling the school. No one knew where Evie was. The despair grew with every passing minute. Lauren didn't know that her daughter was safe, fed and protected just a few miles away. She didn't know that a 5-year-old child had come up with a plan to save her best friend. She didn't know that Evie was sleeping for the first time in weeks, without worrying about what would happen the next day. In the silent attic of the Reed mansion, Evie looked through the small window at the stars outside. For the first time since they had lost their home, she felt hopeful. And in the room just below, Maisie finally fell asleep, dreaming of plans to reunite Evie with her mother, never imagining that her little secret operation was about to change far more lives than she could ever imagine. Malcolm Reed got home at 5:40 in the afternoon, 3 hours earlier than usual. The meeting with the Japanese investors had been cancelled at the last minute, and for the first time in months, he decided not to find something else to fill the time. Maybe it was time to try being the father Maisie had drawn, the smiling man holding his daughter's hand. He parked in the garage and entered through the back door, expecting to find Mrs. Henderson in the kitchen preparing dinner, but the house was quiet, and a note on the counter explained that she had left early for a doctor's appointment. "Maisie," he called out, loosening his tie. "Daddy's home." There was no answer. Malcolm went up the stairs, his steps echoing on the marble. Maisie's bedroom door was open, but she wasn't there. Her schoolbooks were spread out on her desk, as if she had left in the middle of her homework. "Maisie," he called again, louder this time. This time, he heard something, a muffled sound coming from upstairs, from the second floor. Malcolm climbed another flight of stairs, following the sound. There were quiet voices, children's whispers. He stopped in the hallway, trying to pinpoint where they were coming from, and then he saw it. The attic rope was down, the folding ladder extended. A faint light spilled from the opening. His heart sped up. Burglars? No, the voices were definitely children. Maisie was up there, but with whom? Malcolm climbed the first few steps of the ladder slowly, trying not to make a sound. The voices became clearer. "Do you think my dad will be home soon?" It was Maisie. "I hope not." A second voice, female, that he didn't recognize. "What if he finds out I'm here?" "He won't find out, and even if he does, I'll explain everything." Maisie said with the confidence of someone who still believes the world is fair. "My dad's nice. He'll understand." Malcolm felt something stir in his chest. When was the last time Maisie had said he was nice? He climbed 2 more steps until he could peek over the attic floor. What he saw made him stop, confused. Maisie was sitting on an old mattress, cross-legged eyes with a bowl of cookies in her lap. Next to her, a girl with dark, curly hair, the same age, wearing wrinkled clothes, was eating the cookies slowly, as if each one were precious. The corner of the attic had been transformed into a small refuge. Pillows, blankets, books, an old lamp that Malcolm recognized as being from the guest room. His 2 daughters, no, one was his daughter and the other was a stranger, had created a secret clubhouse. "Evie, do you want me to read you a story?" Maisie offered, picking up a book from the pile. "Can it be the one about the rabbit we started yesterday?" Malcolm frowned. Yesterday? How long had this been going on? He finished climbing the ladder, stepping onto the wooden floor that creaked under his weight. The 2 girls froze, looking at him with wide, startled eyes. "Daddy!" Maisie jumped up, knocking over the bowl of cookies. You're home early." The other girl, Evie, shrank behind Maisie, clearly terrified. Her dark eyes were huge in her small face, and she trembled like a cornered animal. Malcolm looked around the makeshift attic hideaway, processing the scene. Maisie's school backpack was open on the floor, empty except for a few crumbs, a nearly empty water bottle, 2 plates with leftover food. Someone was living here. "Maisie," he said, his voice calmer than he felt. "Who is your friend?" This is Evie," Maisie stammered, placing herself protectively in front of the other girl. "She's from my school. She just came over to play in the attic. We like it up here. It's our secret fort. Malcolm knelt and getting down to the girl's level. Evie was trembling harder now, and tears began to stream down her face. "Evie," he said gently, "is that your name?" She nodded, unable to speak. "How long have you been here, Evie?" "2 days." The answer came in a barely audible whisper. 2 days? Malcolm looked at Maisie, who lowered her eyes. "Maisie, where are Evie's parents?" Maisie started, but Evie interrupted her. "It's just my mom," Evie said, still whispering. "My dad left when I was a baby." "And where is your mom now?" The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Evie looked at Maisie, who nodded encouragingly. "I don't know," Evie finally confessed. We lost our house. And my mom said she would find a place for us to stay, but..." Her voice broke. "But she didn't come back to pick me up from school." Malcolm felt as if he had been punched in the gut. A homeless child, a missing mother, and his 5-year-old daughter had decided to solve it all on her own. "Maisie," he said, keeping his voice firm but gentle. "Did you bring Evie home because she had nowhere to stay?" Maisie nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "She has nothing, Daddy. No house, not enough food, no..." She sobbed. "And I have so much. It wasn't fair for her to be all alone." Malcolm looked at the 2 girls, his daughter trying to save the world and the other lost, frightened child. Something inside him broke and reformed at the same time. He had spent 2 years burying himself in work, building walls around his heart, thinking he was protecting himself and his daughter. But Maisie had done the exact opposite. She had opened her heart, extended her hand, risked everything to help someone in need. "What you did was a very beautiful thing, sweetheart," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But you didn't have to hide it. I didn't." "No." Malcolm reached out a hand to Evie, who hesitated before taking it. "If you had told me, we could have helped in the right way." Evie looked at him with those huge, frightened eyes. "You're not going to send me away?" "Where would I send you, sweetie?" Malcolm asked gently. "You told me you don't have a home. Evie struggled to find the words. "My mom is sleeping in a car. We don't have a house." The words came out in a broken whisper, loaded with all the shame and despair a 5-year-old shouldn't have to know. Malcolm was silent for a long moment. The world around him seemed to stop. A mother sleeping in a car, a homeless child. His own daughter creating solutions to problems that adults couldn't solve. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, firmer, more decisive than it had been in years. "Evie, look at me." She lifted her eyes, still trembling. "You are not going to sleep in a hidden attic, and your mother is not going to sleep in a car." He paused, the weight of his decision settling on his shoulders. "We're going to find her, and you 2 are going to stay here, for real. In the guest room, with a real bed, real food, and everything you need." "Really?" Maisie asked, her eyes shining. "Really," Malcolm confirmed. "But first, we need to find your mom, Evie. Do you have any idea where she might be?" Evie thought for a moment. "She said she was going to look for a job downtown, and that she found a place to sleep. But I think she lied." She wiped her nose with her sleeve. "She always lies when she doesn't want me to worry." Malcolm stood up, offering a hand to both girls. "Evie, do you know where your mom is right now?" Evie hesitated, biting her lower lip. I know where she sleeps." "Where?" "In an abandoned car." The answer came in a shameful whisper. "Near the vacant lot on Oak Street. She showed me before she dropped me off at school yesterday." Malcolm's chest tightened. A mother sleeping in an abandoned car while desperately searching for her missing daughter. "Can you take me there?" Evie nodded, her eyes filling with hope. "You're really going to get her?" "I am," Malcolm said, and for the first time in 2 years, he felt he was doing something truly important. "We're going to get your mom and bring her home." As they came down from the attic, Malcolm carrying Evie and holding Maisie's hand, he felt something he had forgotten existed. Purpose. For the first time since Sarah's death, he had a mission that went beyond numbers, contracts, and meetings. He had 2 children depending on him, and a desperate mother who needed to be reunited with her daughter. And he was not going to fail any of them. The vacant lot was on the other side of town, in an area Malcolm Reed had never visited. As he drove down Oak Street, with Maisie and Evie in the back seat, he watched the landscape gradually change. The well-kept houses gave way to peeling apartment buildings. The perfect gardens were replaced by empty lots full of overgrown weeds. "It's here," Evie said quietly, pointing to a lot surrounded by a broken chain-link fence. "Turn left." Malcolm parked on the side of the street and looked through the windshield. The lot was an expanse of packed dirt dotted with a few abandoned cars, piles of rubble, and a lone tree growing in the center. Under the tree, almost hidden by the late afternoon shadows, was a blue 1990s sedan. The paint was peeling. One of the back windows had a hole covered with duct tape, and the front bumper hung at an odd angle, but it was clearly inhabited. There was a small pile of folded clothes on the hood, and a plastic bottle next to the driver's door. "She's in there," Evie whispered, her eyes fixed on the car. "Mommy always sleeps in the front seat because it's safer." Malcolm turned off the engine and sat for a moment, processing the scene. A woman living in an abandoned car, a child who knew the details of that life because it had become normal for her. "You two stay here," he said, unlocking the doors. "Let me talk to her first." "No." Evie leaned forward, grabbing his arm. "She'll be scared if a stranger comes alone. Please, let me come with you." Malcolm looked into the girl's pleading eyes and nodded. "Okay, but you two stay behind me." They got out of the car and walked across the uneven ground. The lot was covered in loose gravel and pieces of glass that crunched under their shoes. The air smelled of dry weeds and something vaguely metallic. As they approached the blue sedan, Malcolm could see more details. The back seat was covered with plastic bags containing what appeared to be all of a family's belongings: clothes, a few children's books, a doll with tangled hair, kitchen utensils wrapped in towels. An entire life reduced to what could fit in an old car. In the passenger seat, a small figure was curled up asleep. Malcolm stopped about 6 feet away, allowing his eyes to adjust to the shadow under the tree. Lauren Murphy had dark brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore faded jeans and a long-sleeve shirt that had seen better days. A child's blanket, pink with a unicorn print, was wrapped around her legs. Next to her on the center console was a half-full bottle of water and a bag of bread that looked like it only had a few slices left. Even in her sleep, her face was lined with tension. One of her hands was clenched into a fist, as if she were preparing to defend herself, even while unconscious. It was clear she had been living in that abandoned car for some time, trying to protect herself, trying to protect her daughter, the only way she knew how. "Mommy," Evie called out softly. Lauren stirred but didn't wake. "Mommy," Evie said a little louder. This time Lauren's eyes snapped open, her body instantly tensing. She looked around, confused for a second, before her eyes found Evie. Then her face transformed completely. "Evie!" She stumbled out of the car, nearly falling on the gravel. "Oh my God! Where were you? I looked for you everywhere. I was so desperate. I thought—" She pulled her daughter into a frantic hug, the words tumbling out between sobs. "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I promised I'd pick you up from school and I couldn't get there on time. And when I arrived, you were already gone, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where you had gone." "It's okay, Mommy," Evie said, hugging her mother tightly. "I'm okay. This is Maisie, my best friend, and this is her dad, Mr. Reed." Only then did Lauren realize they weren't alone. She quickly straightened up, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, trying to regain her composure. Malcolm saw the exact moment that shame replaced relief on her face. He saw, when she realized where they had found her, what they had seen. A mother sleeping in an abandoned car, surrounded by all that was left of her life. Lauren began, her voice hoarse with emotion. "Evie, you shouldn't have bothered these people. I told you I would figure our situation out. She didn't bother anyone," Malcolm said gently. "My daughter brought Evie to our home because she was worried." Lauren looked at him for the first time, really looked. She saw the expensive suit, the Italian shoes, the watch that cost more than a year's salary. She saw everything she wasn't, everything she couldn't provide for her daughter. "I'll pay you back," she said quickly, "for anything she ate or used. I just need a few days to get things sorted." "You don't owe us anything," Malcolm interrupted. "But we need to talk about your situation." Lauren stiffened, bracing for a lecture or humiliation, but Malcolm just said, calmly and firmly, "Get your things. You're sleeping under a roof tonight. It's the least we can do." Lauren blinked, confused. "I'm sorry. You're going to stay at our house," Malcolm repeated, "for as long as you need to get back on your feet." "But I can't accept that," Lauren protested. "You don't even know me. I could be anyone, dangerous or—" "You're the mother of a 5-year-old girl who was sleeping in an abandoned car," Malcolm said simply. "That's all I need to know." Lauren looked at him for a long moment, searching for any sign of pity or condescension, but there was only sincerity in his dark eyes. "Why?" she asked. "Why would a stranger do this?" Malcolm glanced at Maisie, who was holding Evie's hand, both girls watching the adult conversation with hopeful eyes. "Because my daughter taught me something important today," he said. "She taught me that when someone needs help, you help them. It's as simple as that." It took 40 minutes to transfer all of Lauren and Evie's belongings from the abandoned car to Malcolm's Mercedes. It wasn't much. A few bags of clothes, some books, important documents kept in a plastic folder, and the few personal items they had managed to save when they were evicted. But each item was treated with respect, as if it were precious. Malcolm carried the heaviest bags. Maisie helped with the children's books, and Lauren held tightly to the folder with their documents. During the drive back, the car was silent. Lauren looked out the window, watching the houses get progressively larger and more manicured as they approached Malcolm's neighborhood. Evie dozed against Maisie, finally relaxed after days of tension. When they arrived at the Reed mansion, Lauren stood on the sidewalk for a moment, staring at the 3-story house with its white columns and perfect gardens. "Is this where you live?" she asked Evie. "It's where we're going to live now," Evie corrected, taking her mother's hand. Maisie said, "We're family now." Lauren felt her eyes fill with tears again. Family. It had been so long since that word had meant anything more than survival. Inside the house, Malcolm led them directly to the first-floor guest suite. It was a spacious room with a queen bed, an additional twin bed, a private bathroom, and a small sitting area. "You can stay here," I said, placing the bags on the floor. "There are towels in the bathroom, and Mrs. Henderson left food in the fridge. Please, help yourselves." Lauren looked around the room, which was larger than any apartment they had lived in for the past 2 years. "Mr. Reed, I don't know how to thank you." "There's no need to thank me," he interrupted. "Just stay, rest. We'll talk about the next steps tomorrow." After Malcolm left, gently closing the door behind him, Lauren sat on the edge of the bed and pulled Evie into her lap. "Are you sure you're okay?" she whispered. "You weren't hurt. No one was mean to you." "Everything's okay, Mommy," Evie assured her. "Maisie took care of me. She gave me food and books and a soft bed. And her dad is nice, just like she said." Lauren hugged her daughter tightly, finally allowing the tears to fall freely. For the first time in months, they were safe. They had a roof over their heads, food in the refrigerator, and soft beds to sleep in. And most importantly, they had hope. The next morning, Lauren woke up before sunrise. It was a habit developed during the weeks in the car, when waking up early meant finding a public restroom before it got too busy. But when she opened her eyes, it took a few seconds to remember where she was. A soft bed, clean sheets, Evie sleeping peacefully in the bed next to her, for the first time in weeks without tossing and turning. Lauren got up slowly and went to the window. The Reed's garden stretched out before her, a perfect lawn, colorful flowers, a small fountain in the center. It was like a postcard. Without making a sound, she left the room and found her way to the kitchen. It was a kitchen out of a magazine. Granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, a center island bigger than many living rooms. But Lauren wasn't interested in the opulence. She was interested in being useful. Without needing instructions, she started to work. She washed the dishes that were in the sink. She wiped down the counters. She organized the appliances. She found ingredients and started brewing fresh coffee. When Malcolm came down for breakfast, he found the kitchen spotless and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee in the air. "You didn't have to do that," he said, but his voice held no reproach. "I wanted to," Lauren replied simply. "It's the only way I know how to say thank you." Over the next few days, Lauren continued to help without anyone asking. She organized the girls' toys. She folded the clothes Mrs. Henderson had washed. She prepared snacks for when the children came home from school. And gradually, the Reed mansion began to change. For the first time in 2 years, there was the sound of children playing in the hallways. Maisie and Evie ran through the house, their laughter echoing through the previously silent rooms. They built forts with sheets in the living room, had picnics in the garden, and read books together in the library. At night, they slept cuddled together in the twin bed in the guest room, whispering secrets and dreams before falling asleep. The house smelled of home-cooked food, not just the formal meals Mrs. Henderson prepared, but freshly baked cookies, popcorn made at night to go with movies, hot chocolate on cold afternoons. Malcolm observed all of this from a respectful distance, but he couldn't help but notice the changes. The house felt alive. For the first time since Sarah's death, there was real warmth within those walls. And as he watched Lauren interact with the girls, patient, caring, present in a way he had forgotten how to be, Malcolm began to feel something he had buried along with his wife. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, a family didn't have to be just a memory of the past. Maybe it could be a promise for the future. A week had passed since Lauren and Evie arrived at the Reed house. Malcolm watched from his living room window as the two girls played in the garden. They had built an imaginary house under the oak tree, using fallen branches and leaves as furniture. Maisie was laughing, a sound he had almost forgotten existed. For the past 2 years, his daughter's laughs had become rare, careful, as if she were testing whether it was safe to be happy. But now she was laughing freely, without reservation. They get along so well. Lauren's voice made him turn. She was standing in the doorway of the room holding 2 cups of coffee. It had become her habit to make coffee for him in the late afternoon, a small gesture of gratitude she insisted on maintaining. "Thank you." Malcolm accepted the cup, noticing how her hands were careful but not delicate. They were hands that worked, that fought, that didn't give up. Lauren sat in the armchair next to the sofa, maintaining a respectful distance. During the week they had been there, she had been careful not to overstep boundaries, not to occupy spaces that weren't hers. "Maisie seems like a different child," Malcolm said, watching his daughter teach Evie how to make flower crowns. "More free." "Children need other children," Lauren replied. "Evie has changed too. She's starting to smile like she did before." She paused, not finishing the sentence. "Before what?" Lauren hesitated, as if deciding how much to share. "Before we lost everything," she said finally. "Before she had to grow up too fast." Malcolm took a sip of the coffee, which was perfect, strong but not bitter. Just like Lauren, strong but not hardened. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to." He said, "No, it's okay." Lauren looked out the windows, watching the girls. "I think it's time I told you the whole truth." She took a deep breath before she began. "I worked at the Hillside supermarket for 3 years. It wasn't much, but it was steady. I could afford a small apartment, buy food, keep Evie in school. We didn't have luxuries, but we had enough." Malcolm nodded, encouraging her to continue. "At the end of last year, the chain was sold. The new owners decided to cut staff to reduce costs." Her voice grew quieter. "I was one of the first to be laid off. No warning, no severance. One day I was working, the next I was on the street, and then it was a roller coaster. Lauren ran a hand through her hair. I looked for a job everywhere, supermarkets, stores, restaurants, offices. But there was always something. Not enough experience, overqualified, hours that didn't work with Evie's school schedule. Malcolm did the math in his head. If she had lost her job at the end of last year, it meant they had been struggling for over 6 months. The months went by, the savings ran out. First, I cut everything that wasn't essential. Then I started falling behind on bills. Then, she paused. Then the landlord lost his patience. How long were you in the car? 3 weeks. The answer came out low, laden with shame. 3 weeks sleeping in car seats, washing up in public restrooms, eating whatever we could buy with the few dollars we had left. Malcolm felt something tighten in his chest. 3 weeks. While he was complaining about meetings that ran late, Lauren was fighting to keep her daughter fed and in school. But you know what's craziest? Lauren continued, and now there was something different in her voice. Not shame, but fierce pride. Even sleeping in a car. She didn't miss a single day of school. Malcolm looked at her with renewed attention. What do you mean? Every day, without exception, I took Evie to school. It didn't matter if I had only slept 2 hours, if it was raining, if the car wouldn't start. Every morning I would wake her up, help her get ready in a gas station bathroom, brush her hair, make sure her clothes were clean. Lauren spoke faster now, as if the words were pouring out from a deep place. Because I might have lost my job, I might have lost my house, I might have lost almost everything. But I was not going to let her lose her education. I was not going to let her lose her future. Malcolm was silent for a moment, processing the magnitude of what she had done. Keeping a child in school while homeless, preserving normality in the midst of chaos. Protecting her daughter's future even as the present was falling apart. That's extraordinary, he said finally. Lauren shrugged, as if it were obvious. It's what any mother would do. No. Malcolm shook his head. It's not what any mother would do. It's what an exceptional mother would do. He looked back at the garden, where Maisie was teaching Evie how to do a cartwheel on the grass. His daughter was radiant, more vibrant than he had seen her in years. Maisie has changed since you arrived. He said, she stays up later, laughs more, eats better. It's like, he searched for the right words, it's like she's become a child again. Evie too. Lauren smiled. Yesterday she asked me if we could stay here forever. She said she's never had a sister before. Malcolm felt something stir in his chest. Sister. The girls already thought of each other as sisters. And you? He asked. What do you want? Lauren met his eyes for the first time in the conversation. I want to rebuild our life. I want to find a job, a place to live, to get back the dignity we lost. She paused. And I want Evie to stay a child for a little longer. She's had to grow up too fast these last few months. Do you have any plans? For work, I mean. I have a few interviews lined up for next week, Lauren said. Nothing guaranteed, but there's hope. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the girls play. The sun was beginning to set, painting the garden in shades of gold. Mr. Reed, Lauren said eventually. Malcolm, he corrected. You can call me Malcolm. Malcolm, she repeated, testing the name. Can I say something? Of course. Lauren hesitated, as if weighing her words carefully. Maisie talks about you a lot when we're alone. Malcolm sat up straighter. What does she say? Lauren paused, clearly uncomfortable. Maybe it's not my place to say, please, Malcolm insisted. I need to know. Lauren took a deep breath. She misses you. She said you work a lot and don't have time for her. The words hit Malcolm like a punch to the gut. He put his coffee cup down on the table, his hands trembling slightly. She said that, not angrily, Lauren quickly clarified. With sadness, she understands that you work to take care of her, but she just wanted more time with her dad. Malcolm closed his eyes. 2 weeks ago, when he'd found the girls in the attic, Maisie had said she missed taking walks with him. And now Lauren was confirming that his daughter's loneliness was real, constant. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said, his voice hoarse. "After Sarah died, I buried myself in work. I thought if I could give Maisie everything materially, it would be enough." "And why did you start working so much?" Malcolm took a long time to answer. "Because it was easier than dealing with the loss. At the office, I had control. I understood the numbers, the contracts, the negotiations. At home, everything reminded me of Sarah. Her laugh, her perfume, the way she would hum while she cooked." He opened his eyes and looked at Lauren. It was easier to stay away than to face the pain. "And Maisie?" "Maisie had Mrs. Henderson. She had school, activities, everything she needed. I thought it was enough." He shook his head. "I was wrong, wasn't I?" "You were dealing with your grief in your own way," Lauren said gently. "It wasn't wrong, just incomplete." They watched the girls run into the house, probably looking for water or a snack. Their voices echoed through the halls, filling the house with life. "She's a special child," Lauren said. "Generous, brave, empathetic. She saved my daughter when no adult could. You and your wife did an incredible job with her." "It was all Sarah," Malcolm admitted. "I just provide..." "No," Lauren shook her head. "Children aren't born with that kind of compassion. They learn it by watching the adults around them. Maisie learned to be generous because she saw generosity. She learned to help because she saw someone helping." Malcolm felt his eyes well up with tears. It had been so long since anyone had said anything positive about his parenting. "She just wants your time," Lauren continued. "She wants to know the father beyond the man who works. She wants to make memories with you." That evening, after the girls had eaten dinner, taken their baths, and settled into the guest room, Malcolm went slowly up the stairs. He paused at the half-open door, watching as Lauren told a story to the two girls. "And then the princess discovered that the real treasure wasn't in the castle," Lauren was saying, her voice soft and melodic. "Where was it?" Evie asked, hugging the stuffed rabbit Maisie had lent her. "It was in the people she loved," Lauren replied, "because love is the only thing that becomes more valuable when you share it." Maisie smiled sleepily. "Just like us here, we love each other, so we're rich." "Most exactly." Lauren kissed both girls on the forehead. "Now sleep. You have school tomorrow." Malcolm waited until Lauren left the room and closed the door before approaching. He knocked lightly. "Maisie, are you still awake?" "Daddy!" Her voice came, muffled by the pillows. "Come in." Malcolm opened the door and found Maisie sitting up in bed, her eyes shining in the dim light. Evie was sleeping peacefully in the bed beside her. "Hi, Princess," he said, sitting on the edge of her bed. "Hi, Daddy. You're home early again today." "I am," he confirmed, "and I'm going to keep coming home early." Maisie tilted her head, curious. "Why?" Malcolm took a deep breath. What Lauren had said still echoed in his mind. "Maisie misses you. She wants time, attention, presence." He knelt beside the bed, getting to his daughter's eye level. The words he needed to say were stuck in his throat, heavy with 2 years of guilt and regret. "I'm sorry, sweetie," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought I was giving you everything, but I wasn't seeing you." Maisie became very still, her big eyes fixed on her father's face. "I know you miss me. I know you want to take walks with me, play with me, have Daddy be present. And I didn't realize, or I realized, and I didn't know how to deal with it." The words came out hard, but they were necessary. "I was so afraid of feeling pain that I forgot to live. I forgot to be a real father to you." "Daddy," Maisie began, but he interrupted her gently. "Let me finish." He held her small hand. "Thank you for waiting for me. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I had given up on myself. Thank you for showing me what really matters." He paused, looking into his daughter's eyes. "I'm here now, for real, and I'm not leaving again." Maisie studied his face for a long moment, as if checking to see if she could believe his words. Then she leaned forward and hugged him tightly, her small arms wrapping around his neck. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered. "I just wanted you to know that I exist." Malcolm felt his heart break and mend at the same time. She just wanted him to know she existed. How had he failed so completely at something so basic? "I know you exist," he whispered back, holding his daughter tightly. "You are the most important thing in my life, and I'm going to spend the rest of my days proving that to you." They held each other for a long time in the quiet room, with Evie sleeping peacefully beside them. And Malcolm felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years: wholeness. The wall he had built around his heart was starting to crumble, and on the other side was not just the pain he had feared, but also the love he had tried to protect: his daughter, his family, his purpose. The following Monday, Malcolm Reed did something he hadn't done in 2 years. He cancelled a meeting to get home by 6 in the evening. Jennifer, his assistant, looked at him with a confused expression when he announced his decision. "But sir, it's the meeting with the Portland investors. They flew in specifically for this." "Reschedule for tomorrow morning," Malcolm said, tidying the papers on his desk. "I have a more important engagement today, but—" "Jennifer," Malcolm interrupted her, but his voice wasn't impatient. It was determined. "Reschedule the meeting." He left the office at 5:30, driving through the familiar streets with a strange feeling in his chest. Anxiety? Expectation? It had been so long since he'd been home while it was still light out that he had almost forgotten what it was like. When he parked in the garage, he heard something that made him pause. Laughter, coming from the backyard, children's laughter, loud and genuine. Malcolm entered through the kitchen door and found Mrs. Henderson preparing dinner. "Mr. Reed." She turned, surprised. "You're home early." "I am," he replied, loosening his tie. "Where are the girls?" "In the garden, playing with Lauren. They're—" "Mrs." Henderson smiled. "They're happy." Malcolm went out the back door and found a scene that made him stop on the porch. Maisie and Evie were playing tag with Lauren, running across the lawn. Lauren was chasing them, making monster noises, and the girls shrieked with joy as they ran away. "Got you." Lauren caught up to Evie, scooping her up and spinning her around. The girl was laughing so hard she could barely breathe. "Now it's my turn to be the monster," Maisie announced, and Lauren set her down so she could chase the grown-ups. Malcolm just stood there watching. When was the last time he had seen Maisie run like that? When was the last time she had laughed that way? "Daddy!" Maisie saw him on the porch and ran towards him. "You're home. We're playing tag. Do you want to play too?" Malcolm looked at his breathless daughter, her cheeks pink from running, her eyes shining with happiness. A week ago, he would have said he was tired, that he needed to shower, that maybe later. Today, he took off his suit jacket and tossed it onto a porch chair. "Of course I do it," he said, stepping down into the garden. "Who's the monster now?" "I am," Maisie yelled, and took off running after him. For the next 15 minutes, Malcolm Reed, CEO of Reed & Associates, a man who controlled millions in investments, ran around his own garden being chased by a 5-year-old girl, and when she finally caught him, he scooped her into his arms and spun her around, listening to her laughter echo across the property. "Dinner's ready." Mrs. Henderson called from the porch. For the first time in 2 years, Malcolm had dinner with his family, sitting at the kitchen table, not the formal dining room table, but the small, cozy one where real meals happened. "So, how was school today?" he asked, serving Maisie some salad. "It was good," she answered excitedly. "We learned about butterflies in science class. Did you know they start as caterpillars?" "I did know that," Malcolm smiled. "And how do they turn into butterflies?" Maisie began to explain the process of metamorphosis with the enthusiasm of a child discovering the world. Malcolm listened to every word, asked questions, showed genuine interest. Evie, initially shy, soon joined the conversation. She talked about the book she was reading, the new friend she had made in class, the drawing her teacher had praised. Lauren watched it all in silence, a small smile on her face. And you, Lauren? Malcolm turned to her. How was your day? I had an interview this morning, she replied. At a department store downtown. They said they'd call me by Friday, so how did it go? Well, I think, Lauren shrugged. The manager seemed nice, and the hours would work with Evie's school. After dinner, Malcolm didn't go up to his office as he always did. Instead, he sat in the living room while the girls played on the rug. Daddy, can you help us with a puzzle? Maisie asked, holding up a box with 1,000 pieces. 2 years ago, Malcolm would have said that puzzles were a waste of time. Tonight, he sat on the floor and started sorting the pieces by color. We always start with the edges, Maisie explained seriously. It's easier. Good strategy, Malcolm agreed, looking for pieces with straight edges. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, each focused on a different section. Evie was assembling a corner with flowers, Maisie was working on the blue sky, and Malcolm was concentrating on a small house in the center of the image. I found one of your pieces, Daddy, Evie said quietly, offering a red piece that was clearly part of the house's roof. Thank you, Evie. Malcolm smiled at her and noticed how she blushed slightly. She was still getting used to his attention. Daddy, Maisie said after a while. Yes? Are you going to keep coming home early? Malcolm stopped looking for pieces and looked at his daughter. I am. Why? Because I like it when you're here, she said simply. The house is happier when you're here. Malcolm felt something tighten in his chest. The house was happier when he was here. For 2 years, he had thought his presence only brought sadness, painful memories, but maybe his absence had been worse. I like being here too, he replied. Actually, I don't know why it took me so long to realize that. On Thursday of that week, Malcolm got home at 5 and found the girls doing homework at the kitchen table. Lauren was supervising them, helping with difficult words and math problems. How are the studies going? He asked, kissing the top of Maisie's head. Good, she showed him her notebook. Look, I wrote an essay about family. Malcolm read over her shoulder. My family is special. I have a daddy who works a lot, but now he comes home early. I have a best friend who is like a sister. I have a Lauren who takes care of us. And I miss my mommy, but she would like our new family. Malcolm felt his eyes fill with tears. New family, that's how Maisie saw their situation. It's beautiful. He said, his voice slightly hoarse. The teacher said that family isn't just about who has the same blood. Maisie explained. It's about who loves and takes care of each other. Your teacher is wise, Malcolm agreed. On Friday, they had pizza in the living room while watching a kids' movie. Malcolm found himself laughing at the silly jokes, invested in the simple story, enjoying the girls' company. Daddy, Maisie said during the end credits. Yes? She hesitated for a moment, as if gathering courage. You could give Lauren a job. Malcolm looked at Lauren, who became visibly uncomfortable. Maisie, Lauren began. I'm serious. Maisie continued, her eyes hopeful. You have a big company, and Lauren is super smart and hardworking. She could work there. Malcolm considered the suggestion, not because Maisie had asked, but because it made sense. He had watched Lauren over the 2 weeks they had been there. She was organized, careful, responsible, and more importantly, she had dignity and determination. You know, that's a good idea, he said finally. Really? Maisie practically jumped off the sofa. Really? Malcolm turned to Lauren. Would you be open to talking about it? Lauren looked at him with a mix of surprise and caution. Mr. Reed, Malcolm, I don't want you to feel like you have to offer me a job just because I'm living here. That's not why, Malcolm answered honestly. It's because I think you'd be good at the job, but you don't even know what kind of work I can do. I know you're reliable, organized, and dedicated. I know you never give up. He paused. And I know that any company would be lucky to have someone like that. On Saturday morning, Malcolm took Lauren to see the Reed & Associates office. The building was empty for the weekend, so he could show her around without the pressure of employees watching. Our company deals mainly with real estate development, he explained as they walked through the hallways. But like any business, we generate a lot of paperwork. Contracts, blueprints, permits, legal documents. They stopped in front of a spacious room filled with filing cabinets. This is our records management department. Malcolm opened the door. We need someone to organize and catalog and maintain all these documents. It's an important job. If we can't find a contract when we need it, it could cost us millions. Lauren looked around the room, assessing the task. How long have these files been disorganized? Too long, Malcolm admitted. Our last organizer retired 6 months ago, and we haven't been able to find a suitable replacement. And what would my hours be? 9 to 5 on Monday to Friday, he replied, with an hour for lunch. And if you need to leave early because of Evie, we can be flexible. Lauren nodded, processing the information. And the salary. Malcolm mentioned a figure that was fair for the job, but also enough for her to rent a decent apartment. It's an honest job, he said. You'd earn your salary through hard work and dedication, not charity. Lauren was silent for a long moment, looking at the disorganized files. Why are you doing this? She asked finally. The real, honest offer. Malcolm thought carefully before answering. Because I need someone reliable for this job. Because you need an opportunity to rebuild your life. And because... He paused, searching for the right words. Because sometimes the things that look like charity are actually disguised opportunities. Lauren studied him for a moment. Thank you for your trust, she said finally. I won't let you down. I know you won't, Malcolm replied. When can I start? Monday, if you'd like. Lauren extended her hand to him, and they shook firmly. I accept, she said, and there was dignity in her voice, not submission. She was a woman accepting a job she deserved, not a favor being done for her. On Sunday night, Malcolm tucked Maisie into bed as he had started doing every night. Daddy, she said as he was leaving. Yes. Thank you for giving Lauren a job. You're welcome, princess. Now she can take proper care of Evie, and we can keep being a family. Malcolm smiled. Yeah, I guess we can. He left the room and went down to the living room, where Lauren was folding clean laundry. It was a domestic, normal, comfortable scene. He was no longer the father who showed up at the end of the day. He was the father who was present. And for the first time in 2 years, Malcolm Reed felt like he was living, not just surviving. 6 weeks after Lauren started working at Reed & Associates, she came home with news that would change everything. I found an apartment. She announced during dinner, trying to sound cheerful. Malcolm stopped cutting his steak, his fork suspended in mid-air. Maisie put down her glass of milk and looked at Lauren with wide eyes. An apartment? Maisie asked, her voice small. Yes, Lauren confirmed, avoiding looking directly at the girl. It's small, but it has 2 bedrooms. And it's near your school, so Evie can keep studying there. Evie, who had been playing with the food on her plate, looked up. We're moving. We are, Lauren said gently. It's time for us to have our own place again. The silence that followed was heavy. Malcolm could almost feel the weight of disappointment radiating from Maisie. But Maisie started, then stopped, as if she didn't know how to express what she was feeling. But you'll still be friends, Lauren quickly added. You can see each other every day at school, and on the weekends. It's not the same, Maisie whispered. Malcolm watched his daughter fight back tears and felt his own chest tighten. During the 6 weeks that Lauren and Evie had lived with them, the house had been transformed. There was laughter in the hallways, conversations during meals, the sound of children playing. There was life, and now they were leaving. When? He asked. Next weekend. Lauren replied. I've already paid the first month's rent and the security deposit. Malcolm nodded, trying to process the information. It was the right thing to do, of course. Lauren had a steady job. She was rebuilding her life, regaining her independence. Staying at his house forever wasn't a realistic option. So why did he feel like he was losing something important? Congratulations, he said finally. It must be a relief to have your own place again. It is, Lauren agreed, but there was something in her voice that didn't sound completely convincing. The rest of the week passed in a strange combination of normalcy and melancholy. The girls continued to play together. Lauren continued to help around the house. Malcolm continued to come home early from work. But there was an atmosphere of farewell hanging over everything. On Thursday night, Malcolm found Maisie sitting on the stairs, hugging her stuffed rabbit. "Hi, Princess. Why aren't you playing with Evie?" "She's packing her things," Maisie answered without looking up, "putting everything in boxes." Malcolm sat down on the stairs next to his daughter. "You're sad that they're leaving, it wasn't a question." "Yeah," Maisie admitted. "I know it's silly, they can't stay here forever." "It's not silly," Malcolm said. "It's normal to feel sad when people we love go away. But it's different," Maisie struggled to explain. "When Mommy went away, it was forever. Evie is going away, but I can still see her. So why am I so sad?" Malcolm thought about his daughter's question. It was a surprisingly mature observation for a 5-year-old. "I think it's because you got used to having a sister," he said finally, "and now you're going to miss having her around all the time." "I wish they could stay," Maisie whispered. "Our house is going to be quiet again." On Friday morning, Lauren loaded the last of the boxes into the car she had bought with her first paycheck, a used but reliable sedan. Evie was holding a doll that Maisie had given her as a farewell gift. "Thank you for everything," Lauren said to Malcolm, extending her hand. "For giving us a roof when we needed it, for giving me a job opportunity, for treating us with dignity when so many people would have turned their backs." Malcolm shook her hand, noticing how firm and warm it was. "Thank you for bringing life back into this house," he replied, "and for helping me be a better father." "You were already a good father," Lauren said. "You just needed to learn how to be present." The girls hugged for a long time, promising to see each other at school on Monday. Maisie cried, silent tears that streamed down her face without her trying to hide them. "I'm going to miss you," she whispered to Evie. "Me too," Evie replied. "But we're still best friends. That doesn't change." Malcolm watched in silence, feeling something stir in his chest. His daughter's generosity had saved a family, and now she was learning one of life's hardest lessons, that sometimes loving someone means letting them go. Lauren's car disappeared around the corner, and the Reed mansion fell silent once again. But it was a different silence than before. It wasn't the empty silence of absence. It was a silence filled with memories. That night, after Maisie had gone to bed, Malcolm went up to his office. He had avoided that room during the weeks Lauren and Evie were there, preferring to spend time with his family. But tonight, he felt the need to be alone with his thoughts. The desk was just as he had left it weeks ago, papers organized, pens aligned, everything in its place. But something was different. Or maybe he was the one who was different. Malcolm opened the bottom drawer of his desk, where he kept personal things. Underneath some old documents, his hands found what they were looking for. Sarah's picture. It was a photo taken 2 months before she died, when they didn't yet know the cancer had returned. She was in the garden, smiling at the camera, her golden hair shining in the afternoon sun. She was wearing a blue dress he had bought for her for their wedding anniversary. Malcolm held the photo carefully, running his thumb over the frame. For 2 years, looking at that picture had been too painful. Tonight, for the first time, he was able to smile. "You would have liked them," he whispered to the photo. "Lauren is strong, like you were, and kind like you were. She took care of our daughter when I didn't know how to do it alone." He paused, looking at his wife's smiling face. "Evie reminds me of you as a child," he continued. "Sweet, but determined. And Maisie. Our Maisie has become an incredible girl. Generous, brave, full of love. You would be so proud of her." Malcolm felt his eyes fill with tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude. "I miss you every day," he said, "but today I realized something. For 2 years, I thought that keeping you alive in my memory meant I had to stop living." I thought moving on would be a betrayal of what we had. He gently touched the glass protecting the photo. But you wouldn't have wanted that, would you? You would have wanted me to be happy. You would have wanted Maisie to have a complete family. You would have wanted me to open my heart to love again. Malcolm took a deep breath. It's time to move on. He slowly closed the drawer, but he didn't put the photo back inside. Instead, he placed it on the bookshelf behind his desk, where he could see it whenever he wanted, but where it no longer dominated his thoughts. Making room for the new didn't mean forgetting the past. It meant allowing the future to happen. Malcolm left the office and stopped at Maisie's bedroom door. She was sleeping, hugging her stuffed rabbit, her breathing soft. Tomorrow was Saturday. Maybe they could go to the park, like she had drawn on that paper weeks ago, or maybe they could visit Lauren and Evie at their new apartment. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. It was full of possibilities. Malcolm went down to his own room, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't exactly happiness, not yet, but it was hope, and for now, that was enough. Outside, the night covered Riverside Heights like a soft blanket. And in the Reed house, a man who had learned to be a father again slept peacefully, dreaming of the future he was finally ready to embrace. 3 months after the move, the visits became frequent. Every Friday, Malcolm would pick Lauren up from work, and together they would get the girls from school. The weekends were split between the apartment and the mansion. It was a natural routine, as if it had always been this way. This Saturday, they were at the Reed house for a special lunch. Malcolm was trying to cook while Lauren supervised him with amusement. "You burned the chicken," she said, looking at the skillet. "I did not. It's golden brown," Malcolm defended, scraping off the dark parts. "Daddy doesn't know how to cook," Maisie explained to Evie seriously. "Mrs. Henderson always did everything." "I can cook some things," Malcolm protested. "Like what?" Lauren asked, raising an eyebrow. "Coffee, toast, scrambled eggs, sometimes." The girls laughed, and Malcolm loved the sound of their joy filling the kitchen. They had lunch on the porch under the warm spring sun. The girls ate quickly and ran off to play in the garden, leaving Malcolm and Lauren alone with their coffee. "They're happy," Lauren observed, watching Maisie and Evie build something with sticks and leaves. "They really are," Malcolm agreed. "And you?" "For the first time in a long time, I wake up without a knot of panic in my chest." Lauren smiled. "It's good to be in control of my own life again." Malcolm nodded, watching the girls in the garden. "You brought joy to this house," he said, his voice getting lower. "And you made me see my daughter. I thought I was giving her everything, but I wasn't giving her the most important thing, which was my presence, my time, my attention." He paused. "You showed me that being a father isn't just about providing. It's about being present. It's about listening, playing, participating." Lauren reached out and took his hand across the table. It was a simple gesture, but it was filled with understanding and affection. "You learned," she said gently, "and Maisie sees it. She talks about how you've changed." Malcolm laced his fingers with hers, noticing how perfectly Lauren's hand fit in his. "And I have the family I didn't know I needed," he said, looking into her eyes. Lauren's eyes shone, not with tears, but with something deeper: hope, love, possibility. "Are we going to be a family?" Maisie had approached without them noticing, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "I've always wanted a sister." Malcolm and Lauren looked at each other, still holding hands, both a little surprised at being discovered in this intimate moment. Evie appeared next to Maisie, shyer, but with a hopeful smile. "Me too," she said quietly. "I've always wanted a sister." Malcolm looked at the two girls, his daughter, and the girl who had become like a daughter to him. Then he looked at Lauren. In her eyes, he saw the same quiet certainty he felt in his own heart. Malcolm and Lauren looked at each other, serene, and they answered, "Maybe we already are. But now, let's build this together." Maisie practically jumped for joy, and Evie smiled so widely that her eyes turned into little crescent moons. "Does that mean you're going to get married?" Maisie asked with the typical frankness of children. Malcolm and Lauren laughed, a bit embarrassed, but they didn't let go of each other's hands. "It means we're going to see what happens," Lauren answered diplomatically. "But no matter what happens, you two will always be sisters at heart, and we will always be a family," Malcolm added. "Even if it's different from what you see in the movies." The girls seemed satisfied and ran back to the garden, probably to plan what their lives would be like as official sisters. Malcolm and Lauren sat in comfortable silence, watching their daughters play. The afternoon sun painted everything gold, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the tree where it had all begun. "So," Lauren said eventually, "we're going to build this together." "We are," Malcolm replied, squeezing her hand. "Slowly, in our own time, in our own way. No rush, no rush," he agreed, "but also no fear. No fear." In the garden, Maisie and Evie played under the same tree where months ago two broken families had met. Now they laughed together, planned together, dreamed together. On the porch, two adults who had learned that family is about choice, love, and dedication watched their daughters build the future they all wanted. The silence that followed was no longer empty. It was full of promise.